Last year, I got an email, and that email was from Lomography, which I was quite surprised that they would email me. They were like, hey, do you want to try a new color film stock? And I was like, of course. So instead of sending me something super unheard of, they sent me a link to their store and were like, do you want to try anything here? And I was like, can I have 2 film stocks? And they're like, sure. So I got a roll of Lomo Classic Color, which is their brand new color emulsion. And I got a roll of Lomography Red Scale. Now with the Red Scale, I'm not going to be showing it in this video. It is for a future project that I have been working on as a long-term idea. But the Lomo Classic Color, I was quite intrigued what this film stock was going to look like, and I was very hopeful that it would look quite good. I also wanted to see how well it would handle different situations. And I thought a different situation wouldn't be shooting the same old. And luckily, I had a wedding to go to in Sydney. So I thought I'd hop across the ditch, get that classic Aussie sunshine. But little did I know that the wedding that I would be going to would be on a grey ass day, and then the day after that would be a grey ass day, and I would only get one classic Aussie sunshine day. But that didn't stop me from trying to get the best out of this film stock. So let's hit in with day one. The reason that I was there was for the wedding, and I was trying to leave film photography back at the hotel and just live in the moment. That being said, I couldn't resist taking the point and shoot, which didn't have Lomo Classic Color in, and it had some slide film in it because I really like to capture trips and keep those moments replayable by being able to project them. So I got some really awesome slide photos, but I'm only going to show you 2 photos from the wedding. What I plan to do with these slide photos is cut them up, put them into some holders, and then turn them into key rings and send them to the wonderful bride and groom. Now, as for day 1 of 3, the thing that took it up the most was the wedding, but the second thing was in the food afterwards and the reception. I'm not too sure, but something didn't agree with me. I didn't get like a stomach bug or anything like that, but I was in a fair amount of discomfort and pretty much lost the rest of the day, but was able to recover enough to go out and later in the evening back to the wedding location. But by that point, the weather wasn't that great. It had gotten even more grey, and I just didn't really like what was in front of me. So we decided that we would do something we'd never done before and cross along the harbour bridge, which we did. We just walked along it, enjoyed, actually holidaying instead of just doing projects. But that being said, I couldn't stop myself from taking this photo. And I took a few others, but this is the one that I really like. And it shows something that this film stock is good for. Blue hour. It has a really, really nice balance to its colors and brings out that blueness in the blue hour that tells you, yeah, it's turning to nighttime. Here's what a city should look like in that atmosphere. Now, one thing to note is there is no written exposure compensation time online for this film stock, but I did the standard 1.33 times the exposure. So once you go past 1 second, you do it for 1.33 times that. So if, say, for example, it is 3 seconds, you want to probably shoot for around 4 seconds. And as you can see, that is basically what I think will work for this film stock, because that's what the results gave as working. So like most color negative film stocks, a 1.33 times reciprocity failure rate is probably bang on the money. Now, when we got back from the Harbour Bridge, I wasn't done going out and walking about and shooting some nighttime stuff. So I headed back out, and I had this spot that wasn't too far from the hotel that had these neon lights that really stood out. and I thought this would be a perfect location for me to go photograph. So I have 4 photos here that I think show you how well this film stock handles shooting in these kinds of settings. As you can see, it's reasonable. The highlights don't blow out too much, and the shadow still has some detail. Now, does it have as much range as other film stocks? Kind of. Yes, kind of no. Like, it has range, but maybe not as much range as some other film stocks, but still a reasonable amount. It's kind of hard to tell with this film stock how well it, has as a total tonal range. The results can vary quite dramatically, and I think lighting conditions definitely impact that from my experience. I really do like this photo, and I could see myself using this film stock for this kind of shot, especially if this film stock comes in 120, which would lessen the grain. Now, I've gone ahead and shown you how it handles nighttime situations. But how does it handle daytime situations? Well, like I said, I was hoping for some sun. Instead, all I got was grey. And one thing to note about this film stock is that it can be quite contrasty in some situations, but under very flat situations, it's also incredibly flat. Now, it could have been my metering, could have been me slightly overexposing, but these are some very flat, not like super unsaturated film photos, but kind of. The one thing to note is that whilst they are flat and they are a little bit bright, the highlights are still there, but it's definitely kind of muted in its colors, and especially the greens, as you can see in this photo here. Now, I shot some things with this film stock, not because I was trying to get a good photo I was always trying to get a better photo than what I got, but I wanted to see how different conditions would really show with this film stock. Now, we were in this one particular hat store, not where I got this hat from, but one thing to note is that with fluorescent lights, they definitely go a little bit more green in this film stock than what I'm used to actually seeing with most film stocks when I shoot in similar lighting conditions inside businesses. And one thing to also note is, Jesus fucking Christ, are hats expensive. It was about $350 for just one of these hats. And it's $350 Australian, which is still around probably closer to $300 American. Jesus fucking Christ. If I ever picked that up as a hobby, I definitely couldn't afford film. Now, we walked around for a little bit longer, and one thing to note is that when this film stock is underexposed, there really isn't much to recover. That being said, when you do expose correctly, like this shot, there is a fair amount of detail in the photos, which is great, even though they're quite grainy. Usually, too much grain can kind of reduce detail. This film stock still has a fair amount there, which I was quite impressed with, especially when I was pixel peeping at this photo and trying to actually see how fine a detail it was. I wasn't exactly what I would call satisfied with the lighting at the time when I went back to the wedding location to shoot at night. So, of course, seeing as I wasn't going to be in Sydney again for quite a long time, I decided to go ahead and go back to that location and shoot a few more photos. And I'm surprised what I got back compared to the first lot. When it hits proper night and you do quite long exposures, like proper long exposures, the film color shifts dramatically and you get these very orange, very warm washed out photos. Yeah, it was a bit frustrating, to be honest, because of just how good it looked during blue hour. But if you do proper long exposures with this film stock, you are going to need a filter. I can't remember if it's the 81B or something else to deal with the daylight balance that it becomes horrifically so in these conditions. And also, these photos were absolute arse anyway, so I can't really blame the film stock on this one. I do have some other photos that I took, which are going to be in another video, but I'm not showing them here because I just haven't organized myself. Now, I got back to the hotel quite late, and instead of going to bed and, getting some rest, I did go to bed, but I got up quite early and didn't have much rest because the next day was our final day, day 3, and it was the only day with sun, and I needed to get a classic Sydney photo. So I headed out to get a photo of the Opera House, and because of the time of year, the Opera House had the sun directly raising behind it, which I knew could make a cool photo. Through I probably wasn't prepared for it as much as I should have been, but then again, this trip was supposed to be about the wedding, and this was more a side quest when it came to shooting and making this video than actually just enjoying a little holiday. That being said, what I did get back, I'm a little bit disappointed with. They do have a kind of expired classic look to them, and I guess, this film stock is called Classic Color, and it's probably more a metering issue because I also took some slide photos which you can clearly see the difference in what a good metering should look like and what I got, but there's definitely an oddness with the dynamic range of this film stock. Sometimes I feel like when you overexpose it, it still retains a decent amount of detail in the shadows. But if you underexpose it or you give it a really dynamic situation when you've got quite dark objects and very bright objects, it just loses detail so easily, which was a little bit disappointing. But that being said, I now know that if I want to do a particular kind of photo with a particular kind of film stock, which isn't this film stock, at that location, I know what time of the year that I'm going to be going back to Sydney, which will probably be February next year, seeing as that's when I went. And with that beautiful sunny sunrise done and over with, I went for a little bit of a walk back to the hotel, and along the way, capture some beautiful morning sunrise shots and finish off the roll. And I did manage right near the end of this roll to snag this photo. Now, with this photo, I do feel slightly conflicted. I think it's a really cool photo. I wish there was a bit more detail on the subject, but at the same time, probably not, and there's a reason. I'm not exactly comfortable with photographing homeless people. I think it is inherently, more so than photographing people on the street, there is a feeling of using people when you photograph homeless people, and I wasn't too sure if the subject here was homeless. I don't think they were. I think they're more just a traveler, and I've spoken to a few other people and that's kind of what they think. They don't think that the person's homeless, but it does make me feel a little bit kind of thing. But I just thought this was such a good shot that I just kind of had to take it. But it is one of those things that makes me second guess myself as a photographer about what I do photograph, because I do think that that's important. So I just wanted to state that here in case anyone else had any particular thoughts about it. I've already had them. Again, this is a really good photo for what it is. I don't think the film stock gave it the best characteristics. Definitely could have been sharper, less grain. Color cast is a bit thing, but at the same time, I was there in the moment and this is what I had. And technically, when it comes to any film stock, it's the one that you have in your camera that matters at the time. That being said, let's talk about this film stock right after I explain what I do next, which is we headed back home, but not before that, dropping off this postcard, this beautiful postcard to send to someone back here in New Zealand. And then we were on our flight back home and I had to take the film through the x-rays. So I do want to make that clear that this film stock has gone through x-rays. It's gone through x-rays on the way to Australia and the way back. And I don't know if that affected the film stock. I don't really think it did. I think basically what I'm seeing is what other people have seen. So do take that into account or not take that into account when looking at these photos. I will both do that, I guess. But like I just said, when it comes to this film stock and how I feel about it, it is a bit low quality in terms of like compared to a Portra or a Kodak Gold. It's not as high end. That being said, for a cheap color film stock, if you're just capturing day-to-day life stuff, it handles pretty well, but I would recommend putting it in a point and shoot than trusting someone who can't expose correctly. Yeah, like it's just that. It doesn't have the best dynamic range. It also has weird color shifts, so I just wouldn't use it for certain kind of things like the nighttime photography, at least in that particular setting that I showed you earlier. But that being said, I would use it for nighttime stuff. I think honestly, this review isn't going to help you decide whether this is a good film stock or not, because I think it matters for your environment and what this film stock can bring out in that environment. It has some, unique characteristics that can enhance a situation. It also has some characteristics that de-enhance situations, so it's entirely subjective to you as a photographer and your taste and what you want to bring from a photograph. But that being said, with this film stock, I do really like the box here. It's quite cute. It really, really is quite cute. And if I happen to get this in 120, I think there's a few photographs that I would love to retake and probably get the characteristics out of this film stock that I think would be best suited and I'd be able to actually be really, really happy with. And on a scale of favorite Lomo film stocks, where do I put this one? I think this film stock here might be my third favorite Lomo film stock. My second favorite has to be Lomography Purple, and my first favorite has to be Lomography Turquoise, which I have a future video coming out somewhat shortly, and goddamn do I have some banger photographs for it. But like I said, as always, until next time, it's been real, guys.